morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the weekly roundup at InsideBlue360.com. I'm Jerry Kane, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mark Mullitz. And our special guest today is Pete Panuccio, who just retired from the NYPD after just under, by like minutes, apparently, 40 years of service. And we're going to talk about how rough it is for the cops out there in the street. Before we start, I have a special request from the audience of the weekly roundup. In 1988, on October 18th of 1988, police officer Chris Hoban was killed in the line of duty on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He was an undercover officer. He was making a drug buy. The drug buy was actually a ripoff, and during a shootout with the bad guys in the apartment, Chris gave his life in service to the people of the city of New York. The following year, at his old high school, Zavarian High School in Brooklyn, police officers who were alums of that school got together and started the Chris Hoban Memorial Run. It used to be a 5-mile run. Now we offer a 5K option for people because not everybody's up to run the 5 miles. We've been doing this run every year since 1989, except for 2001. It's always the third Sunday in September. Obviously, 2001, we had other things that we had to do. This year, we're going to carry forward the tradition as a virtual run. That means anybody, anywhere on the planet Earth can do a virtual 5K, virtual 5 mile. You can even lie about it and just, support the run and not even do anything. Nobody cares. The important thing is to remember the heroism of a police officer, that his memory never dies. And there is a fundraising aspect to this. We raise money for a scholarship that goes to the son or daughter of a police officer at Zavarian High School. So we help our brothers and sisters in law enforcement get a good quality high school education for their kid. So I'd ask for everybody to go to Zavarian.com/HobanRun. We'll be putting that graphic up on the screen for you. We're not going to spell it or anything like that. And please go to the site, join the virtual run, get your shirt, get your bib, hashtag us at Hoban 2020 on race day. I want to see pictures of people jogging, walking, drinking beer or whatever. Let's remember Chris, his heroism and sacrifice. It's an important thing that we never forget those who pay the ultimate price. And that's going to help us segue into a pretty heavy conversation. Our guest today, Pete Panuccio, retired detective sergeant from the NYPD, spent over 39 years with the department and just retired last week. And we're going to talk, we're now 3 retired guys. We're going to talk about how rough it is out there for the cops who are working the street these days in these trying times. And it's probably easier for us to talk about it because we can't get punished by the department for telling the truth. So Pete, welcome.
Thank you, Jerry.
You were just there last week. You were a sworn member of the job a week ago.
Yes, I was.
How bad is it out there?
It's not good. I have institutional memory, I guess, but it lapsed from 1981 to 2020. That's a couple of generations of policing, and we went through some hard times. When I came on, crime was beginning to be a major problem. Crack hit, and we went off the rails to the point in the 1990s. We had a very adversarial relationship with the mayor at the time, Dinkins, but nothing like where we're at now. At that time, we were still supported by the laws, the penal law of the state of New York. We could do our jobs. We don't have that now. That's gone. With the recent criminal justice reforms, the no bail, people are going out, we're locking up the same guys over and over. They're doing patterns, 15, 20 robberies, burgs, getting released in arraignments. That's just a small component. You have the city council, the mayor, extremely well, it's the flavor across the nation, just this whole anti-police. And it seems like it really just went into fever pitch between June and July. 30 years ago, things were different. We go out there, we went to a lot of protests. We dealt with it. That's how New York City cops were. We'd sit there, we'd listen to your nonsense, whatever it is you wanted to carry on about. As long as you didn't get violent. As long as you played by the rules. Well, there are no rules now. There's a level of hatred, just malevolence with these people that are protesting. And you know, when the NYPD, back in the day, when we were discussing it earlier with the Crown Heights riots or up in Washington Heights, when the powers that be said, okay, this riot's over, well, that riot ended, and it ended quickly. Today, everybody's carrying phones, and it's all the drama. Oh, cop shoved me, a cop did this, cop did that. Cop hurt my feelings. All right, well, you know what? Grow up, buttercup. Too bad. In this day and age, if a cop puts his, because of the recent changes to with the city council bill, you put your hands on somebody, you're taking your livelihood, never mind your physical well-being, because everybody out there now has an attitude who wants to fight with the cops. But your livelihood, you're facing criminal penalties, civil penalties, because of this misguided. I don't even know how to describe it. It was just like the local city government just completely went off the cliff with this, and it's dangerous. Cops cannot protect themselves. They cannot protect civilians. They cannot do their job. They've been handcuffed by what is basically terrible, terrible law. Who's going to lose? The violence is going to surge first, and you know, in places like Brownsville, Bed-Stuy, Harlem.
Right.
Those are the people that need the cops the most. Those are the people that are going to suffer first and suffer the hardest. So you get back to the question: what are the cops dealing with out there? You know, part of the reason why I left at the end, I could have stayed a few more years. You're just walking in every night. It's just like you walk in a building, and it's like this overriding sense of gloom and doom, and just, do I think anything's going to happen to me? No, that's not what I was worried about. It's just this general feeling. My assignment was in night watch, so I'm a step or two removed from young cops in sector cars. They tried to take the block one night during the riots. We all got running out there. Now, I've heard some salty language in my lifetime. I have used some salty language in my lifetime. What I heard standing up at that barrier that was directed at the cops out there was the foulest, most vicious, and just, it wasn't just, it was hatred. What was really disturbing, a lot of it was directed at black and Hispanic members of the service, in particular black and Hispanic females. And I gotta be honest with you, 20 or 30 years ago, you know what? Hey bro, say your piece, now say it walking, because you're pushing it. Nobody wants a fight. We don't want to be out there fighting, rolling around with people. We just, all right, nobody has a problem with your protest, but you're really pushing the line. Nobody got physical. The cops, every cop that was out there, from the boss on down, behaved. But what was said to these officers, what was directed to them, this is just hatred.
We had Al Titus on as a guest a couple weeks ago. We had him on the Zoom. And he told me the same thing, that he's hearing from young black officers that they're just getting brutalized, being called all kinds of nasty shit by white people.
Oh, yeah.
Who are out there protesting for the rights of African American members of the community, are screaming at black cops. Like, it's just insane how this equation came to be, that someone would think that they're standing on the side of right doing that. It's just amazing to me.
It's horrible. And you know what? I'm not the tech savvy guy. I didn't have a body cam or anything. It's something that, I was just sitting here thinking about it. I would like to video these people. Okay.
Well, you see it on the news every night. I mean,
well,
it's
what?
It depends on what news you watch, but for the most part, these protesters, they're in the cops' face. They're through the barriers. There's no. Everybody's afraid to put their hands on people, and policing is not going to work that way,
no,
because it's a
absolutely
hands-on job. And plain and simple, if we're not on the same page, it's going to end soon. And we were all on a job in the 80s,
Well,
so we
listen,
know, you know, it's night and day from what these poor cops are dealing with today.
So in the 80s, and I can say this because I'm retired, but this was the truth. I walked the foot post. Mark and I walked foot posts on 42nd Street. 42nd Street was a very violent block, and it was also really like the center of crack cocaine in Manhattan. Not in the distribution, that was all up in Washington Heights, but the retail sale of it. And you'd see, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 or 5 guys hanging on the corner, they're up to no good. You tell them to take a walk. If they didn't take a walk, one of them got hit with a nightstick in the side of the leg. The other 3 or 4 took off quickly, and the guy who got hit, he remembered you the next time that you told him to move. As a kid growing up in Brooklyn, I understood that quite well. When me and my friends would hang on the corner, if a cop came by,
You move.
Your dad was on a job back in those days. I don't think he worked in Brooklyn, but if a cop came by and told us to move, whoever was the slowest
forget
got
about
the
it.
stick right in
Yeah.
the back of the calf, hard. You feel it for a couple days.
As soon as that cop made the turn on the block, it was like
Right.
parting of the sea. Everybody would just,
So now, obviously, the generation that's out there now knows, as soon as the cops come on the block, we start throwing shit at
Yeah.
them and filming them with our cell phones. How that came about, and how are the cops supposed to suppress violent crime when that's going on?
Well, they locked up a girl. The warrant squad locked up a girl at a demo last week.
Yes.
Okay, she was destroying all the police cameras. So they locked her up for criminal miss. The van pulled in. They grabbed her, put her.
Great collar.
Great collar.
Great collar.
But, the news is calling she was abducted. First of all.
Oh, politicians.
And the mayor
Right.
said the arrest could have been made more sensitive.
Yes.
I mean,
That was a political
Pete,
tie-in.
I give you a lot of credit, Pete, because when somebody tells me they had 39, 40 years on the job, most of them were inside, had a cushy job, you were in the street the whole time, patrol, anti-crime, detective squad, night watch. Usually at the 20th year, guys are like, all right, I could leave, I don't know how much more I could take, so kudos to you.
I'll
I give
tell
you
you
a lot
what,
of credits.
right up until the last moment, I loved it.
I loved it
The
too.
night
We all-
before, I
all
was
of us
out
loved it.
walking around, dealing with multiple shootings uptown. And no complaints. It's a whole set of different issues, but one of which is this just nasty atmosphere. And I don't see it changing, and I see the politicians, every chance they get, dump a little more gas on the fire. And you see what's going on across the nation. Like everybody, that whole thing, that was a perfect call. Those guys did their job, the warrant squad.
Oh.
They went out,
Exactly.
that person,
They probably had her spotted an hour before they grabbed her.
They
but
did.
She was probably in the crowd.
so here's this person, and it wasn't like it was a name on a complaint report. It wasn't like a suspect. She had actual warrants that are signed by a judge. It doesn't get any better than that.
Exactly.
They snatch her up. Well, I don't know what she is because she's a transgender person. It's been going back and forth between male and female.
Right. Either way.
So never
it's
mind you're grabbing a person who's a protester, an Antifa type, but now you also have the different LGBTQ groups also chiming in and targeting transgender. It can't be anything further from the truth.
No, exactly.
This was some clown who thought it was funny to smash thousands of dollars worth of police equipment.
Exactly.
All right? Everybody's like, hey, this is free reign. We can do whatever we want out here. Well, you know what? People are watching. People are paying attention on our end. Now you want to go out in the parade, you're marching your ass down the street, bang, warrants grabs you. What do the politicians go right to? It's the secret police.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Trump's stormtroopers coming out of gasp, unmarked vehicles. And you know what? I even people that I know well, I was like, oh, it's unmarked vehicles. And I'm like, it's okay. I says, I really hate to burst your bubble, but you know what? The NYPD has been using unmarked vehicles since Henry Ford invented the Model T.
Yeah.
That's
So
how
it's
long
part of
we've
the
been
job.
doing it.
Pete,
It's all part of the job.
I'm 61 years old, and I remember growing up in Brooklyn. Now, every car made has side view mirrors, plural. But back in the day, only cops had a passenger side view mirror.
Correct.
So you'd see that
Hey,
unmarked
I learn
car,
something new every day. I
and
never
you'd
knew
see that side view mirror on the passenger side, and me and my friends would be like, cops. they're gonna steal our beer. Watch.
Yes. You know what? But think back
Right.
to gentler, kinder times where
Yes.
that was that was the
Right.
big downer of your day. Cops taking your beer away.
Right.
And generally, you were more afraid of that cop
Oh yeah.
speaking to your father or running into your mother somewhere and saying, or God forbid, getting grabbed by the scruff of the neck and say, "We're going home to see your father."
Pete, my dad was a World War II vet. And my uncle was. I had uncles on the job. Forget it. My dad would hit me into the next century, into the 22nd century.
Well, the problem today too, Pete, is that it's never the kid's fault. You know, it's the teacher's fault. It's it's the cops.
Right.
It's never my kid. You know, when I was a kid, if I knew the teacher was calling my house, I went in. I got walked in that door in the last possible second
Yeah.
because I knew it was coming. You
Right.
know. Now today, these kids. Look at these kids living in City Hall Park. You know, every
Right.
night sleeping in City Hall Park. When I was on a job at 5:05, if you were feeding the pigeons, eating your sandwich on the bench in City Hall Park, they came and told you gotta go.
Right.
That's it. And
There
you
was
left.
no, and you
Right.
left.
'Cause it's
camping
taxpayer-
out
'cause it's-
and going to the bathroom.
Because the city administration at that time understood you need tax-paying citizens to keep all this stuff afloat.
It's crazy.
And
It's crazy.
and now they're seeing the tax-paying citizens are leaving. I just gonna our producer Pam, look at the special effect. Just brought in the Scott Lobato special T-shirt.
There you go.
couldn't have came at a perfect time.
Outstanding. This is like a work of art. This should be
Funny.
hung in a gallery someplace. There you go.
Came in right on cue.
Producer Pam's
Just
got a
speaking
good,
about that guy.
Producer Pam has a good arm, by the way. That throw was delivered with accuracy. Could use you on some of our New York sports teams where they can't seem to do that. Some of them. Over
City Hall
the
Park,
years, right? There's been this move away to, making everything looser, more rights for people. That children have rights, are allowed to do whatever they want, whenever they want. I read in the paper this morning that Governor Cuomo is begging rich people to come back to New York and save us with their taxes.
Yeah, not gonna happen.
But why would they? Why would a billionaire who all he has to do is spend 6 months and 1 day in Florida and save tens of maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of taxes? Maybe he wants to live here in New York because New York's so great? No, it's not so great. People crapping on the street all over the place. There's encampments, homeless encampments. I feel bad for homeless people. I do. I've fed homeless people. I've gone into my own pocket a million times. But no one's going to spend $10 million on an apartment and have all this tax money spent in the city if there's a junkie shooting up heroin on the front door.
Right now, we're in a vicious cycle. Tremendously overbuilt commercial real estate, tremendous overbuild with residential. This is expensive property. Then guess what? People learn something. I don't have to be in Manhattan to keep my business running.
Exactly.
But
I don't need that overhead.
We talk about Cuomo. I mean, ridiculous. The biggest impediment for me buying like a weekend place upstate right now, I don't want to pay New York State taxes.
Right.
What am I getting in return for the tax money I put into this dump? I get this buffoon sitting there, we shouldn't. I'm sick of this guy, all right? You've created an unfriendly environment for business. Never mind what you created for the cops.
Right.
And the average Joe, all right, who's not a cop or not even a businessman, when they look at their tax bills for their homes, what am I getting in return?
Right.
You get nothing. You get just a constant slide of state-provided services going down the tubes. And you look where the money gets spent on nonsense.
Pete, in the high crime areas of the city, where you're investigating these shootings every night up until just last week, I always remember being in the bad parts of town, and the young people are definitely anti-police, and you sense the animosity as soon as you get out of the car. But I always remember you'd be in the projects. You were an old housing cop, and it used to kill me. The little old lady. Now I'm like 6'2" and I have a pistol. The little old lady would be like, "Be careful of that apartment, officer." And this is the silent majority, even in the high crime areas, the economically challenged areas of the city, that are so grateful that the police are there.
Sure, I'll tell you.
They're still there, right, Pete?
Oh, they are.
In 1986, 87, there used to be a building on 154th Street, crack building. One old lady in there, her name was Mama Bootsy. She used to chase the crack dealers out with a broom. That's a God's honest true story. And it's that one person that makes you
Right.
that makes you want to do what you did because you're doing it for them. How
Well-
about the old lady that's walking down, 96 years old, walking down right where by the 13th there in Gramercy Park. You got a guy that's locked up 110 times.
Right.
Somebody's mother, grandmother walking with a cane going to the drugstore, and he punches her right in the face.
Mark, I don't want you to name him, but you told an interesting story off air before he came on about this cop who quit. About what all cops are facing now.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
Pete the story. I don't know if Pete heard it.
No, I ran into a cop over the summer that I've ran into a few times in the past. Gung ho about the job. I saw him this summer. Quit.
Yeah.
He just didn't trust himself. He just I don't really know the deep down story, but he left the job after 5 years just to go do something else. That's unheard of. I mean, you came on this job. This is all I ever wanted to do.
Right.
I never went to college. My father was on the job. My uncles, my cousins. All I ever wanted to do was be a city cop. And no matter how bad it was, you never. And we went through those times where you had 80, 90 homicides in your precinct, and every day dealing with. You never dealt with anything nice.
No.
Everything was.
But you know what? You're winning every day.
Yeah,
because overall the atmosphere.
The guys you
was
worked
positive.
with, everything.
The people you work with.
Oh, it was great.
You could do your job.
It was great.
And there was some overwhelming odds. Don't get me wrong. But you know what? As tough as it was a job that you enjoyed going to. Because of the people you work with, the fact that you were supported. You're just discussing now about Mama Bootsy. Okay. I would go to jobs on Pacific Street in the 7-7 back in the 80s, between Bedford and Nostrand. Horrible, horrible block. One of the most violent blocks in New York City. There was an elderly lady that lived on that block, and it was just the unfortunate circumstances of the time. She was also raising her grandchildren. She had the misfortune of living in a ground floor apartment in the middle of the block. And I'm over there one day on a homicide, and I go walking in. Granted, nobody's going to speak to you in the street on a block like that publicly. But that was 1988. And she opened up the door, and she goes, please. She says, I see you out here all the time. She says, you got to do something. She goes, look at this. Her living room, her ceiling was pockmarked with bullet holes.
Mm-hmm.
Straight shots. She wasn't being targeted. I guess
No, it
straight
wasn't
shots.
being targeted. Just rounds flying through her window every night. Her windows boarded up with plywood. And she says, I got to put the babies in the bathtub every night. Jump ahead now. Here I am, 2020, on a project uptown. And the door opens. And it's an elderly lady who says, thank you.
Yeah.
She's not going to come out and give me a hug.
No, right.
In the hallway.
Right.
Right.
People walking down the street saying, we support you.
Right.
And people that, on the occasions where we are inside an apartment speaking to people, depending on the situation, they're begging us for help. And the unfortunate thing is, we didn't come on this job to sit around and do nothing. We're not.
No.
We're
working for those people.
especially
Of
the
course we are.
crew sitting right here. We were never the guys that
Right.
came in and, that wasn't us. And what happens is, we have a situation. I gotta tell this grandma, I'm saying, like, you understand, we pretty much cannot put our hands on anybody. And she's like, put your hands on them. She says, you guys need to take your nightsticks out and beat their skulls in.
Right.
That's what they need.
So I guess this is
There's a lot of
So you
public
were a
support.
sergeant, I was a sergeant, Mark was a cop. So I got to ask you a sergeant question, and not about your squad. I know you had like a hand-picked squad, so your guys you probably brought them to your squad because they were self-motivated. How are sergeants keeping their cops motivated now, out there today? I mean, it's two roles I always thought as a boss. One is you want to protect your guys' health. You want to protect their career. You don't want them getting jammed up. But you need them to work. So how do you do those three things in this environment?
Right now, I think it's just, everybody knows the predicament that they're in. You know, how quickly your life can change because you got into a fight you're rolling around with a perp. Everybody's acting accordingly. You know, be careful, protect each other. You know, that's really the main thing right now. These politicians are not going to protect us. I think a vast majority of the bosses in the job, the big bosses, they understand what's going on.
Well, you see them in the street. You see what. Sorry to cut you off, Pete. But you see what we never had. You didn't see lieutenants and captains rolling around the street in Washington Heights or Crown Heights.
No.
You didn't know who your CO or your precinct was for 6 months.
No.
You know, it's.
But if you worked nights, he only did days, right?
You didn't know, but now you watch the news and you see these guys are out there.
You know, I think there's a general recognition up the line, and you know, I've never seen a situation where you have a police commissioner in charge of up until a few months ago, and dealing with some tough times. Cops really had to deal a lot with the COVID. That really took a lot out of everybody prior to all this other stuff happening.
Yeah, eight cops died of COVID from the NYPD.
Well, yeah, it's
and I don't know how many retirees, scores.
Well, so you're operating in that environment, you're worried about sickness and everything else, and then all this rioting and stuff starts happening. In the middle of this, you got this mayor who's not going to support us. You have a city council that turned around with their recent bill they passed and basically just said, that's it. So I look at the police commissioner. Okay, you want me to run a 35,000 person police department. You want crime. Crime was on the uptick before any of this stuff even started. It was already happening.
I mean, it can only go so low before it starts coming
the
back.
criminal justice reforms opened the floodgate
doubt.
on that.
Right.
That had already started. COVID slowed it down. Now we have no crime teams out there. So everybody's carrying guns. I tell you that. I just want to tell everybody right now. I says, you think you're worried? You're reading bad articles in the paper now. Wait until the restrictions are lifted. Tourists are back. People are back in their apartments. It's going to be a target-rich environment for robberies, for violence. But this is the first time I can ever remember where you have a police commissioner that says, okay, yeah, you're in charge of this big old police department here with all these resources and everything. Except you can't make arrest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can we make arrest? Yeah, you can. But if it gets to the situation where it becomes violent, the cops have to stand back. That is no way to run a police department.
Right.
I've never seen that in almost 40 years where you all of a sudden, okay, you guys can be cops and wear that uniform and everything. You just can't go out and really do your job.
So
That's insanity.
You're going to come back as a guest. I'm telling you right now. We got to wrap it up because we got the high sign for the time. I don't know how you guys feel. I know how I feel. The cops that I worked with that I loved were not afraid to risk their lives or their health.
Not at all.
But they were afraid. They didn't want to risk their freedom. And that's what I think has been
perfectly put.
That has been put on the table here by the current perfect storm, basically. That's
It is
hit our cops.
exactly what it is.
So, Pete, you were great. We love you. Pete Panuccio, American hero, NYPD legend.
Listen,
Mark
legend.
Mulets, not
Legend.
Mullets, my co-hosts.
I just want to say one thing. I know most of our audience is law enforcement. Thank a cop. If you're a retired guy, those young cops need to hear that. Because they're putting up with stuff that in 40 years, I didn't have to deal with it. You didn't have. That's the level of abuse that the young police officers are putting up out there today. Thank a cop. Let them know they're supported.
Well, there you go. To everybody out there, all you cops who are still holding the line,
Thank you.
you.